comencemos esto. Wow, 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 wow. Vale. Voy a empezar por la cámara.
We designed this hall so that players had to use a box as a shield, but many playtesters read it as an avoid the energy ball timing puzzle and simply left the box behind. We solved this in large part by having the AI talk about the box. A lot. Once the dialogue went in, playtesters went from routinely abandoning the box to never wanting it to leave their side. Since we weren't going to make the players lug a box around for the rest of the game, we had a scene at the end of the level where the players are forced to kill the box.
Yeah! Nope. Yeah!
I know that I was told that, sort of the idea of Valve is that everything is planned. Everything is worked out in advance. But that's a big fat lie. Because the initial idea is started, and they bring an actor into the studio and they say, say these words for us. Say this computer-generated voice for us. Okay, I'll do that. Well, then that gives the creators other ideas. And it's a rolling process. You roll from one idea into the next idea.
The awful end of the companion cube serves a dual purpose. It adds a lot more sinister character to our already pretty sinister AIs, while simultaneously training the player to use the incinerator, a key component of the final level. The training has a nice dramatic payoff, since players later get to avenge the death of their good friend the companion cube by stuffing some of the AI's important parts into exactly the same type of incinerator.
Creating the AI voice was a multi-step process. First, we ran every line of dialogue through an automatic text-to-speech program. In the studio, we cued the actress who plays Gladys, Ellen McLean, with the computer-generated sound file. She'd mimic it, and then over the course of several takes, adjust her performance to clean up any words that were unintelligible in the computer version. For instance, here's a line as Ellen delivered it.
Perfect. Please move quickly to the chamber lock, as the effects of prolonged exposure to the button are not part of this test.
Once the recording was done, we processed all of the dialogue to give it an extra computery edge. Here's that same line as it appears in the game, with the pitch constrained, pitch modulation suppressed, and the formant moved up.
Perfect. Please move quickly to the chamber lock, as the effects of prolonged exposure to the button are not part of this test.
As an actor, you come in, you do what you're told, you want to make your money, and sometimes you get good direction and sometimes you don't get good direction, but it doesn't matter, and you certainly don't tell the production team any of this. But you come in and they'll give you a lame line reading, and you're supposed to find some emotional value in that. But this is not what this team did. They would come in, for example, explosively indignant. That's a wonderful direction for an actor. So, I must say that the production team won me over, because so often I get bogus direction, but this time I was actually directed and had fun at all the sessions.
una muchacha y una guitarra para poder cantar. Esas son cosas que en esta vida nunca me han de faltar. Siempre cantando, siempre bailando, yo quisiera morir.
We use these moving platforms to add time pressure to puzzles. A sequence of simple decisions feels much more climactic under time pressure, in contrast to most puzzles in Portal which can be solved at the player's leisure. Puzzles that aren't time-bound can be more complex, but at the expense of being less dramatic.
Sometimes little details make a huge difference. For instance, we had to add the left side to this wall to give players a visual representation of how thick it is. Without it, playtesters frequently thought that the hall had just gotten impossibly narrow, panicked, and stopped making rational decisions.
Before the player escapes the fire pit, the AI dialogue is all delivered in a computerized monotone. After the escape, however, Gladys gets progressively more expressive until, by the end, she's cycling through a whole mess of emotions. The role required an actor capable of mimicking the computer-generated voice while still infusing it with some real character. Since we planned to end the game with a song, she also needed to have a good singing voice. The woman we ended up casting, Ellen McLean, is a great mimic, a terrific actor, and a classically trained operatic soprano, so that worked out pretty good.
In these new areas, we weren't using the surfaces the player is familiar with. The rules for which new surfaces portals can be placed on, and which surfaces are off limits, needed to be taught. So, we created this area both to show the player they've escaped into the guts of the facility, and to retrain them in which surfaces are valid for portal placement.
I went to Portal's, I Googled Portal in game, and I went to the trailer, and I just loved it. I loved hearing my voice. And as I told the production team, I have never played a computer game in my life, but I want to play this one.
Fue una de las risas que más me ha dado.
After players escape, we let them solve an old chamber in a new way. This reintroduction of a familiar space, which can now be solved in an incorrect way, helps convey the sense that players are cheating the system while forging their own path through the facility.
One bizarre fact of game design is that without some serious prompting, players will rarely look up. In this case, the prompt is a ladder. Most players will investigate where the ladder goes, which is up. The ladder actually falls apart as soon as it's touched, but by then it's served its purpose.
We designed the post-escape levels to give players brief glimpses of the inner workings of the Enrichment Center. This particular area exposes part of the storage cube distribution system. These little vignettes help make this section of the game visually distinct from the testing chambers, while reinforcing the idea that players are now behind the scenes.
Through playtesting, we discovered that fatigue set in if we didn't break up the more complicated, deliberately paced puzzles with problems that required the player to perform a much simpler task under time pressure. These pistons proved to be a good foundation for that simpler type of puzzle. Because they feature a moving surface, they also gave us an opportunity to employ some unusual portal transitions, such as ceiling to ceiling.
During development, we'd often run across some piece of level design that would break the portal system. For instance, this ceiling-to-ceiling transition was an unexpected edge case that ended up requiring a lot of effort to make work. We tried never to take the easy route of simply changing the level design to work with existing portal technology. We knew that once the game was out in the wild, custom map creators would stress the system in ways we hadn't even considered, so we made it as flexible as possible.
In the sound booth, you're only connected to the production team by an intercom, and they can talk about you, and you don't know what they're saying. But you trust that they're being kind. And, you know, they'll push a button and then they'll say something to me. They'll say, a direction. No, that wasn't right. Do it again. Give us 3 more reads. And a lot of times what happens is they would play the computer-generated sound for me on one line, and then I'm supposed to recreate that 3 times with the director saying, okay, well, you know, more sarcastic or more angry or more irritated. So you stand in the booth hour after hour after hour. They're always very nice. They let you have water in here and maybe a pencil to take a few notes. And of course you want it to be interesting because you want them to hire you again.
An important design goal of these post-escape levels was to give players the sense that they're running wild inside the guts of the facility. With that in mind, we added plenty of nooks and crannies for players to crawl into or place portals through. This ended up being a tricky lighting challenge, as the areas needed to be bright enough to navigate while still being dim enough to feel like obscure, disused sections of the building.
As the end of the game draws closer, we increase the ratio of time-pressured puzzles, like this turret ambush, to give the players the sense that they're approaching a climactic encounter.
Sarcasm. GLaDOS is sarcastic a lot. And that's so much fun. But while I was trying to do this, trying to build in all these emotions, I still had to maintain the computer sound and maintain the pronunciation of repeated phrases. You know, aperture science and the enrichment center.
These rocket sentries originally fired lasers. We switched from lasers to rockets after we introduced the glass breaking mechanic, mainly because glass shattering in a massive rocket explosion turned out to be a lot more satisfying than glass just slowly being melted by a laser. Originally they also spoke, just like the bullet turrets. Because players often redirect the rockets with their backs to the turret, however, a distinct, uncluttered sound cue was required. The voice simply added too much noise to the rocket redirect mechanic.
Breaking this tube gives players a chance to test out their newly trained rocket redirecting and glass breaking skills in a slightly different context, which helps cement the training.
massive turret ambush was originally a lot more massive, with turrets that dropped from the ceiling and popped out of surprise hatches. In fact, for a while, it was the game's climactic battle. Through playtesting, we learned that this type of pure combat experience didn't really fit with the preceding few hours of player training. Over several iterations, we toned down the combat and made the room more about using portal momentum to fling yourself great distances, a skill that playtesters really enjoyed using, and that's a key component of what eventually became our final battle.
Originally, these catwalks were decorative, but playtesters consistently thought they were significant and often spent a lot of time trying to reach them. We didn't want to stand between people and their desire to walk on the catwalks, so we redesigned the area to make catwalks not only accessible, but also necessary to proceed.
Fiction behind this red phone is that while GLaDOS was being developed, it was somebody's job to sit by it. And if it ever looked like the AI was becoming sentient and godlike, that person would pick up the phone and call somebody to come help. In the point in time where the actual game takes place, it's become obvious that the Aperture Science red phone plan didn't 100% work out.
So when they told me that there was going to be a song at the end, I thought, well, all right, who's going to write the song? And they told me there was going to be a song written by Jonathan Colton. And I listened to a song that Jonathan had written, and it was very funny, very clever. So I thought at that point, well, you know, this will be okay. But I am an opera singer, so usually I sing, "Ah, quando me ne va." And I thought, well, will I be able to have the right style for the song? So I was concerned. But then before the recording, they sent me an MP3 file of the song, and I listened to it with Jonathan singing it. But I loved the little song. And at home, as I practiced the little song, I tried to, you know, get back to GLaDOS's voice. You know, Aperture Science, just this tiny little passive-aggressive computer who's all alone until people try to come in and murder her. So of course she gets upset. But she seems to have this real affinity for cake. And I want to play the game because I want to recreate the cake recipe and then put Portal on it and be able to serve it to my friends when they come over to my house.
GLaDOS, the rogue disk operating system that now runs Aperture Science, went through a bunch of design iterations. Early versions included a floating brain, a sprawling spidery mechanism, and an upside-down version of Botticelli's Rise of Venus built out of robot parts and wire. Eventually we settled on a huge mechanical device with a delicate robotic figure dangling out of it, which successfully conveys both GLaDOS's raw power and her femininity.
Thank you for assuming the Putty Aircode submission position.